Doc accomplished a great deal. He's in the Swimming Coaches Hall of Fame in Fort Lauderdale. He was at one time a American record holder in the butterfly breaststroke. He started his swimming career in St. Louis. He grew up in St. Louis and swam for the downtown YMCA. Swimming was different in those days. His coach was a man named Ernie Vornbreck, and Ernie influenced Doc probably more than anyone else in his life. And it was Ernie's care that I would say rescued Doc from a life of mediocrity to the life of achievement that he had. Ernie was concerned more about Doc than just swimming, and Ernie would take him to museums and to other events. The money was really tight. This is 1940, 41, in that range. So many times Doc's family Doc's mother and father were separated, so they didn't have a lot of money, and Ernie would help Doc get to some of these meets. And when Doc got noticed by the coach from Ohio State, or Mike Pepe, he was offered a scholarship. Well, the scholarships in those days were a lot less than they are now. I think tuition was $1.50 a semester or something like that. So Doc went to Ohio State, and it was during this time that he was the American record holder in the butterfly breaststroke. He was also captain of the Ohio State team, but World War II got in the way, and although he had the best time in the world at that point in the butterfly breaststroke, there was no Olympic Games in 1944 or 1940, so he never got to go to the Olympics. And he went into the war and flew B-24s in Italy and got the Distinguished Flying Cross for saving his airplane. It got shot down, and he saved it and saved all crew members. So he came back and went back to school at Ohio State, and had already by that time married Marge Counsilman, his wife, and he started learning about coaching. The workouts in those days were different than they are now. It was like here at Royer Pool now, we're watching a practice for the age group team, and it was unusual in those days for the coach actually to do anything during a practice. He would just write up on the board what the workout was, and each individual would come in and do it on his own. Well, Doc changed that. He started coaching the Ohio State team, even though he was one of the swimmers. So he learned a little bit about coaching, and he was very popular with his swimmers because he would help them. And he started studying it, and he was 121st out of 124 in his high school class. In other words, he wasn't a good student, and he went to Ohio State and graduated with honors because he finally found something he really enjoyed, and he majored in biology, I believe.
Well, by the time I went down to Memphis where he was stationed, I didn't care. I had lost all idea of how upset my parents would be at me. And I went down and got on a train and went to Memphis. And I was supposed to take my sister, but she didn't want to go, so I went anyway. Now in those days, that was an amazing step for a person to take. And when he met the train, and he said, "We're going to get married tomorrow." He had asked me to bring these phony rings with me when I came. So I sort of had an idea of what it might lead to, and we took a bus and went down to Hernando, Mississippi, which is the Gretna Green of the South in this country, where anybody can get married. You just have to get a little sheet of paper from the town hall, and it turned out that and then go and see the Justice of the Peace. In our case, he had egg all down his front because it was breakfast time, but we didn't care. And That was the beginning of a 60-year-old marriage. He said to me as we were coming back on the bus, so as not to waste the day, is it okay if I go swimming on my wedding day? So I said, well, all right. And I sat in a gilt chair and said to myself, I think this whole incident is trying to tell me something. And I think it was. Very important thing to learn. Swimming comes first.
Then in 1968, Indiana started a string of 6 consecutive national championships, which at the time was, well, it still is, the record for the most number of national championships in a row. And during that time, we could have taken Indiana's team and had a dual meet against the rest of the world and would have beaten them. In other words, most of the swimmers that were in this pool training, at one point we had 11 Olympians on the team at my senior year. Mark Spitz, World Swimmer of the Year, Gary Hall, World Swimmer of the Year, John Kinsella and Mike Stam and just Jim Montgomery. The number of people that came out of this pool during that era is just phenomenal, all in the Swimming Hall of Fame now. And then in 1979, well, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, probably 1975, and the disease progresses very slowly. So he'd always been interested in the channel. He read about Matthew Webb and something he'd always wanted to do, and he thought, well, he was 58 years old. At that time, if he finished it, he would be the oldest person to ever do the channel. And so he thought, well, this might be a good time. For one, I can do something I've always wanted to do, and two, I can prove to myself that Parkinson's is not going to slow me down. I can prove to my swimmers that I still have the strength to coach for many more years, and I can break the record. So he trained phenomenally well for that. I was here in Bloomington during that summer and I watched him train, and he was very, very well prepared, and went to the channel, and it was not an easy swim, but he made it 13 hours and change and became the oldest person to ever swim the English Channel. And WTIU did a documentary called The Oldest Man in the Sea. It's kind of a play on the Ernest Hemingway. So he no longer holds that record. As a 62-year-old has broken his record, but that was I think probably the most proud moment of his career was when he crossed the channel. And then he retired in 1990 and rewrote The Science of Swimming, his book. And 1997, he was no longer able to function on his own, and he had to go into assisted living, and it took 6.5 years, but the Parkinson's finally took his life in 2004.